The entire classroom froze. It wasn't the kind of silence that happens when the teacher walks in late. It was the heavy, uncomfortable kind that makes everyone glance at one another, unsure of what to do. At the center of the room stood Mr. Carter, the substitute teacher with sharp glasses and a calm, steady look. He was holding a thin piece of paper in his hand, and on it were the test scores everyone had taken last week. "Do you all realize what just happened here?" he said, his voice breaking through the silence. Every student waited for the names they expected: Alex, the football captain, or Sarah, the debate team star. Those were the kids everyone knew were smart. But then Mr. Carter did the unthinkable. He tapped the paper, raised his eyes, and said slowly, "The highest score in this class, and by far the most impressive answers I've seen in years, belongs to Lena Parker." The room erupted in gasps. Some kids laughed nervously, others twisted in their seats. Lena? The same girl nobody ever sat with at lunch? The one they pretended didn't exist when group projects came around? The one they whispered about behind her back because her clothes weren't new, her hair wasn't perfect, and she never said much in class? Lena sat frozen, her face turning red as every eye in the room landed on her. For years she had been invisible, just another shadow in the back of the class. But now, for the first time, someone had pulled her into the light. And that one moment was about to change everything. But before we get to what happened next, you need to understand how Lena got here in the first place. Lena Parker grew up in a small town in Indiana, in a faded two-story house at the end of a quiet street. Her father had left when she was only 6, and her mother worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Lena was the oldest of 3 children, and every morning she packed her little brother's lunch before heading off to school with a backpack that always seemed too worn out to last another year. From the outside, she looked like any other kid. But inside school walls, Lena was a ghost. Teachers hardly noticed her because she never made trouble. Students ignored her because she didn't dress like them, didn't talk like them, didn't belong to any group. When it came time for projects, no one asked her to join. At lunch, she sat at the corner table near the trash cans. And when she raised her hand in class, it was rare for anyone, even the teachers, to call on her. For years, Lena told herself it didn't matter. She convinced herself that being invisible was safer than being noticed. But the truth was, every laugh that skipped over her, every whisper that never included her name, carved another crack inside her. We share powerful stories that uncover hidden truths and challenge perspectives. Subscribe to stay updated, share to keep others safe, and comment where you're watching from. There were small moments that showed just how cruel silence could be. Like the day in 4th grade when they played dodgeball and Lena was picked last. The gym teacher had to call her name because both teams had ignored her. Or the time in 7th grade when a science project meant everyone needed partners, and Lena ended up alone, piecing together her model while others laughed in groups. She had gotten an A on that project, but no one cared. Still, Lena had one secret. At night, when the world was quiet, she would take out a notebook from under her bed and write. Sometimes it was math problems she taught herself, other times it was long stories about people who felt unseen, just like her. She wrote equations the school never assigned and solved puzzles no one gave her. That notebook became her closest friend, the only place she was allowed to be brilliant. The years passed, each one stacked on top of the other like heavy bricks. By the time Lena was 16, she had grown so used to being ignored that it no longer surprised her. She carried herself small, shoulders bent, always slipping through the halls unseen. Teachers glanced past her. Students pushed past her. Life carried on, and Lena remained a shadow. Until the day Mr. Carter walked into that classroom. It started like any other ordinary morning. The usual teacher, Mrs. Jenkins, was out sick, and the class buzzed with excitement about a substitute. Substitutes usually meant movies or free time, or someone who didn't know the rules well enough to stop the chaos. But Mr. Carter was different. He didn't start with a movie. He didn't even introduce himself in a long speech. Instead, he handed back the test papers they had taken the week before. Most students barely glanced at their scores. Some bragged, some groaned. But Mr. Carter lingered at the front of the room, looking through the papers with a curious frown. Then he stopped at one, his eyes narrowing. "This," he said, holding it up, "is not just good. This is exceptional." Nobody knew whose paper it was until he read out the name, Lena Parker. And in that moment, the one I told you about at the beginning, Lena's life turned upside down. The laughter, the stares, the disbelief, the sound of her own heart beating so loud she thought the whole room could hear it. 4 years she had prayed for someone to notice her, and now that it had finally happened, she wasn't sure she was ready for it. What Mr. Carter did next would set the stage for everything that followed. But that's where the story twists, because just when Lena thought things might finally change, something happened that no one saw coming. The room was still buzzing after Mr. Carter announced Lena's name. Students kept whispering, some shaking their heads, others laughing under their breath. Lena felt her face burning as she stared down at the scratched surface of her desk. She wanted to disappear, melt into the floor, vanish the way she always had before. But this time she couldn't. Everyone had heard her name. Everyone had seen the paper in Mr. Carter's hand. And no matter how much they wanted to deny it, they knew the truth. Lena Parker had beaten them all. "Lena," Mr. Carter said, his voice firm but kind, "could you come up here for a second?" Her heart stopped. Every eye in the room followed her as she slowly stood, clutching the strap of her backpack like a lifeline. She walked to the front, her shoes squeaking softly against the linoleum floor. When she reached him, Mr. Carter handed her the test paper. A perfect score written in bold red ink at the top. 100%. But there was more. In the margins of the paper were his notes. Brilliant analysis. Advanced reasoning. College-level insight. The students gasped again. Lena's hands shook as she stared at the paper. No teacher had ever written anything like that for her. In fact, most teachers barely noticed her handwriting, let alone her thoughts. For the first time, Lena felt the weight of being seen. But just as quickly as the moment began, it turned sharp. "Hold up," one of the boys in the back called out. It was Ethan Cooper, the class clown who always had an audience. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded, smirking. "There's no way she got that score. She probably cheated." Laughter erupted around him. Others nodded, whispering to each other. "Yeah," another girl added, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Since when does Lena even talk in class, let alone ace the test? This doesn't make sense." The words cut deep. Lena wanted to defend herself, to scream that she had worked hard, that she had stayed up late studying on her own. But her throat closed up, trapping the words inside. She glanced at Mr. Carter, terrified he might believe them too. But he didn't. "Enough," Mr. Carter said sharply, his tone silencing the room. "No one cheated. I've graded hundreds of these exams. Her answers weren't just right, they were original. You can't copy originality." The classroom grew still. Some students rolled their eyes, but they didn't dare speak again. Ethan slouched in his chair, muttering under his breath. Lena clutched her paper tightly and hurried back to her seat. She could still feel everyone's eyes on her, but now it was different. For years they hadn't looked at her at all. Now they couldn't stop staring. The rest of the class felt endless. Mr. Carter continued teaching, but Lena barely heard him. Her mind replayed the moment over and over, the praise, the insults, the stares. By the time the bell rang, her chest ached from holding her breath for so long. As she packed her things, a hand tapped her shoulder. She turned to see Maya Turner, one of the most popular girls in school. Maya rarely spoke to her. "That was weird," Maya said, her brows raised. "I didn't know you were smart like that." It wasn't a compliment. It was surprise mixed with doubt. Lena forced a small smile and shrugged, shoving her books into her bag. Maya didn't wait for a response. She just walked away, already chatting with her friends. Lena left the classroom quietly, slipping into the hallway where lockers slammed and voices echoed. The world around her carried on as if nothing had changed. But inside, Lena felt something stirring. A tiny spark she hadn't felt before, hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something different. At home that afternoon, Lena sat on her bed staring at the test paper. Her little brother, Caleb, peeked in. "What's that?" he asked, his eyes wide. Just a test, Lena said softly. You got 100? Caleb's voice rose in excitement. That's awesome, Lena. His joy made her smile. For once, she felt proud to show something off. She taped the paper above her desk, right next to the window where the sunlight hit it. It was the first piece of proof she had that her brilliance was real. Still, doubts lingered. The way Ethan had accused her, the way Maya had looked at her. It reminded her that being seen didn't always mean being accepted. Sometimes, being noticed could be even harder than being ignored. But Mr. Carter's words echoed in her mind. You can't copy originality. Maybe he was right. Maybe she really did have something no one else could take from her. The next day at school, things shifted. Whispers followed her down the halls. Some kids looked at her with curiosity, others with suspicion. A few even sneered, muttering words she couldn't quite catch. During lunch, she sat alone as usual, but this time she could feel the weight of eyes on her from across the cafeteria. She kept her head down, nibbling at her sandwich, wishing the ground would open up and swallow her whole. That was when Mr. Carter walked by. He paused at her table, surprising everyone. Mind if I sit here? He asked. The cafeteria went quiet. Teachers never sat with students at lunch, especially not with someone like Lena. She blinked, unsure how to respond. Sure. He sat across from her, placing his lunch tray down. I wanted to tell you something, he said, leaning forward slightly. Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself. I've taught for 20 years, and I don't say this lightly, you have a rare gift. Don't hide it. Lena's throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She nodded, but before she could answer, a loud crash echoed from the far side of the cafeteria. A group of students had stood up, and in the middle of them was Ethan Cooper. He was holding a crumpled piece of paper high in the air. Hey everyone, look what I found, Ethan shouted. His friends laughed as he waved the paper around. Lena froze. She recognized the notebook paper instantly. It was hers, her private notebook she had accidentally left in her locker that morning. Ethan must have broken the lock or slipped it out when she wasn't looking. Her heart sank as she realized what he held. Pages of her secret work, equations, stories, thoughts she had never shown anyone. And now he was about to show them to the whole school. The cafeteria felt like it had shrunk. The noise, the laughter, the clinking of trays. All of it faded until Lena could only hear the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Ethan held the notebook high, shaking it as if it were a trophy. His friends roared with laughter, egging him on. Listen to this? Ethan sneered, unfolding one of the pages. He cleared his throat dramatically and began reading. Invisible. That's what I am. A shadow at the edge of every room. But one day, maybe someone will see me. The words echoed through the cafeteria like a cruel spotlight. Lena's face burned. She knew exactly what page that was from. It wasn't math, it wasn't equations, it was her secret writing. Thoughts she had poured onto the page late at night when the world felt too heavy. And now Ethan had turned them into entertainment. The room erupted in laughter. Some kids slapped the table. Others leaned in, hungry for more. Ethan grinned and kept reading. They don't know I see patterns no one else does. They don't know numbers are my only friends. If they did, maybe they'd stop pretending I don't exist. Lena wanted to run, to grab the notebook and disappear. But her legs felt like concrete. Her throat tightened. She couldn't breathe. And then Mr. Carter stood up. Enough! His voice boomed, cutting through the chaos. The cafeteria fell silent, eyes snapping toward him. He marched toward Ethan, his expression unreadable. Give that back, he said firmly. Ethan hesitated, the grin fading slightly. It's just a joke, he muttered. No, Mr. Carter said, holding out his hand. It's bullying. Hand it over. The silence stretched. Finally, Ethan shoved the notebook into his hand, rolling his eyes. Whatever. Didn't know she wrote her diary like a loser. Snickers rippled across the room, but softer this time, uncertain under Mr. Carter's glare. He handed the notebook back to Lena gently, almost as if it were something fragile. "This belongs to you," he said quietly. "Don't ever let anyone treat your voice like it doesn't matter." Her hands shook as she took it, pressing it against her chest. She whispered a thank you, though her voice barely carried. The bell rang, breaking the moment. Students scattered, still whispering, still curious. But the energy in the air had shifted. For the first time, people had seen Lena not just as invisible, but as different. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps us motivated and reminds us that our stories are making a difference in people's lives. That afternoon, Lena sat on the school bus, the notebook clutched in her lap. She could still hear Ethan's mocking voice in her head, repeating her words. She wanted to cry, but she refused to give him that power. Instead, she flipped open the notebook and reread the lines he had exposed. The words looked different now. Once they had been her shame, her secret. But when Ethan read them aloud, something strange had happened. They had filled the air. People had heard them, and though most had laughed, not all of them did. She remembered catching sight of a few faces in the cafeteria. Kids who hadn't laughed, kids who looked thoughtful. Maybe, she realized, her words mattered more than she thought. The next day, the whispers didn't stop. But this time, they weren't all cruel. As Lena walked down the hall, she heard snippets. "Did you hear what she wrote? I didn't know she was that smart. She writes too? Like actually writes." By lunchtime, the cafeteria felt different. Ethan sat with his usual crowd, but the attention on him had faded. A few students actually glanced Lena's way, not mocking but curious. And then something happened she never expected. A girl from her math class, Olivia Barnes, approached her table. She had brown hair tied in a neat braid and carried a stack of books. "Hey," Olivia said, her voice shy. I just wanted to say I thought what you wrote was really good." Lena blinked, unsure how to respond. No one had ever complimented her writing before. You did?" she asked. Olivia nodded. "Yeah, Ethan was being a jerk. But I liked the part about patterns. It was deep." Lena felt a small warmth spread in her chest. "Thanks," she said softly. Olivia smiled and sat down, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And just like that, Lena wasn't alone at lunch anymore. That night, at home, Lena sat at her desk staring at the notebook. She thought about Mr. Carter's words, about Olivia sitting with her, about the way her secret writing had unexpectedly given her a voice. For the first time, she didn't feel like hiding it. She opened to a blank page and wrote, "Maybe being invisible isn't forever. Maybe someone finally sees me." She closed the notebook with a smile. But the peace didn't last. 2 days later, Lena walked into school and found something taped to her locker. First, she thought it was a note. But as she stepped closer, her stomach dropped. It was a photocopy of one of her notebook pages, the same one Ethan had read aloud in the cafeteria. Except this time, it wasn't just words. Someone had scribbled across it in red marker, "Loser." Around it were doodles mocking her, glasses, question marks, and a cartoon of a lonely girl sitting by herself. Laughter echoed down the hall as students passed by, pointing at the locker. Lena's heart sank. Just when she thought things were changing, the cruelty had found a new way to strike. She ripped the paper down, crumpling it in her fist. Tears stung her eyes, but she bit them back. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. But inside, she felt the old fear creeping back. Maybe she wasn't strong enough to handle being noticed. And then, just as she was about to walk away, she heard a voice behind her. "Lena," it said softly. She turned. Mr. Carter stood there, watching the scene unfold, his face unreadable. "I need to talk to you," he said. His tone wasn't harsh, but it carried weight. "Something important. Come with me." Her heart pounded. What could be so urgent? And why did he look so serious? She clutched her notebook tighter and followed him down the hall, not knowing that what he was about to reveal would change her life in a way she never expected. The hallway was almost empty as Lena followed Mr. Carter. The echo of their footsteps bounced off the lockers, each step pulling her further away from the mocking laughter behind her. Her fists were still clenched around the crumpled paper she had ripped from her locker. She wanted to ask what this was about, why he looked so serious, but the words stuck in her throat. Finally, they reached a quiet room at the end of the hall, a small resource center teachers used for tutoring. Mr. Carter opened the door and gestured for her to sit down. She hesitated, then slid into one of the chairs, hugging her notebook tightly against her chest. He closed the door and sat across from her. For a long moment, he didn't speak. He just studied her, as though weighing how much to say. "Lena," he began gently, "do you know why I stopped everything in that classroom the other day? Why I couldn't ignore your test paper?" She shook her head, barely whispering, "Because it was good?" Mr. Carter leaned forward. "Not just good. Exceptional. I've taught for 2 decades. I've seen smart kids, gifted kids. But what you did wasn't just knowledge. It was insight. You see connections most students and most adults would miss." Lena blinked. No one had ever described her like that before. She'd heard words like quiet, shy, strange, but never insightful. She lowered her eyes. "That doesn't matter. Nobody cares. They just laugh at me." He nodded slowly. "They laugh because they don't understand. People fear what's different, Lena. But I saw your brilliance, and I couldn't let it go unnoticed." Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him. She really did. But after years of being invisible, a single kind word felt almost dangerous, like it might disappear if she reached for it. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly. Mr. Carter took a deep breath. "Because you need to know you don't belong in the shadows. You belong in the light. And if you let me, I want to help you step into it." Lena stared at him, unsure how to respond. No teacher had ever said anything like this to her before. Most barely remembered her name. And now here was a man telling her she was brilliant, that she could be more than invisible. But before she could answer, a knock at the door startled them both. The door opened, and Olivia stepped in. Her braid was loose, and her face looked pale. "Mr. Carter, sorry to interrupt, but something's happening." "What is it?" he asked. Olivia glanced at Lena nervously. "It's Ethan. He's passing around copies of her notebook. More pages. Everyone in the cafeteria has them." Lena's stomach dropped. Her notebook, her secret thoughts, her equations, her stories, her heart. All of it was now being spread like cheap gossip, piece by piece. "No," she whispered, clutching the notebook tighter as though it could protect her. Mr. Carter's jaw tightened. "Stay here," he ordered. He turned to Olivia. "Don't let anyone else in. I'll be back." Before Lena could protest, he was gone. The minutes ticked by painfully. Olivia sat across from Lena, fiddling with her hands. "He'll stop it," she said softly. "Don't worry." But Lena couldn't stop worrying. She imagined Ethan handing out copies, laughing as her private words became jokes for everyone else. She imagined kids mocking the way she thought, the way she saw the world. It felt like her soul had been stolen and put on display. After what felt like forever, the door opened again. Mr. Carter stepped inside, holding a stack of crumpled photocopies. He tossed them onto the desk with disgust. "It's handled," he said firmly. "I've confiscated every copy I could find. Ethan is in the principal's office now." Lena stared at the papers. Her handwriting was everywhere, black ink against white paper. Words that had been hers alone now looked strange, foreign, violated. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "It doesn't matter. Everyone's already seen them." Mr. Carter softened. "It does matter, because what they saw isn't something to mock. It's something extraordinary. They just don't realize it yet." He looked at her, his voice steady. "Lena, you have a gift, but a gift means nothing if you bury it. You can't let fear silence you. You need to own it." Olivia nodded quietly. "He's right. I thought your writing was beautiful. You made me feel things I didn't even know how to explain. That's rare." Lena's throat tightened. Two people, two voices saying the same thing. Maybe it wasn't a trick. Maybe it wasn't pity. Maybe they meant it. For the first time, a thought flickered in her mind. What if they're right? What if I really do have something worth sharing? The school day dragged on. Whispers followed Lena in every hallway, but now they weren't all cruel. Some kids looked at her differently, not with mockery, but with curiosity, like they were seeing her for the first time. Still, the fear lingered. She couldn't shake the image of her words being laughed at. She couldn't erase the memory of loser scribbled across her page. By the time the final bell rang, her head throbbed. She grabbed her things and rushed out, desperate to escape. But as she stepped into the crisp afternoon air, she froze. Waiting by the school gates was Ethan, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his smirk firmly in place. Well, he said, blocking her path. Look who's finally getting attention. Must feel nice. Huh? Too bad it's not the kind you wanted. Lena's pulse quickened. She glanced around, but the street was mostly empty. Olivia had gone the other way. Mr. Carter wasn't here. It was just her and Ethan. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think you're special because you can write some creepy poems and solve a few problems? Newsflash, Parker, nobody cares. You'll always be a nobody. She swallowed hard, clutching her notebook like a shield. Leave me alone, she whispered. Ethan chuckled. Or what? You'll write about me in your little diary. Her hands trembled, but something inside her stirred. She remembered Mr. Carter's words. You don't belong in the shadows. You belong in the light. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. She lifted her chin, meeting Ethan's eyes. At least I write. At least I think. What do you do, Ethan? Make people laugh because you're scared they'll laugh at you first. For the first time, his smirk faltered. His jaw clenched, and his eyes narrowed. Careful, he muttered. But Lena didn't back down. Not this time. You can steal my words, but you can't steal my mind. And deep down, you know that scares you. The air grew tense. For a moment, it seemed like he might actually shove her, lash out. But then he stepped back, his smile returning, colder this time. You'll regret that, he said softly. Trust me. And with that, he walked away, leaving her standing there, her heart pounding. She had stood up to him. She had spoken her truth. But his parting words lingered like a shadow. You'll regret that. Lena didn't know what he meant, but she was about to find out. Lena barely slept that night. Ethan's words replayed in her head like a broken record. You'll regret that. She stared at the ceiling in the darkness, clutching her notebook against her chest as though it could protect her. For years, being invisible had been her shield. Now, she had dared to step out of the shadows, and Ethan had noticed. And Ethan was not the kind of person who forgot. The next morning, Lena walked into school with her stomach twisted in knots. The hallway buzzed as usual, lockers slamming, laughter bouncing off the walls, footsteps echoing on the tiles. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for her. As she approached her locker, she braced herself, half expecting another cruel drawing or mocking note taped to it. But this time the locker was clean. No papers, no graffiti. Relief washed over her. Maybe Ethan had said those words just to scare her. Maybe it was over. But then she noticed the stairs. Dozens of eyes watching her as she walked down the hall. Whispers followed her like a shadow. She caught fragments of sentences. Did you see it? Yeah, online. It's everywhere. Lena's heart sank. Online? When she reached her first class, the truth hit her. Olivia hurried to her side, eyes wide with worry. Lena, someone posted your notebook pages. What? Lena's voice cracked. On social media, pictures of your writing. Everyone's sharing them. Some people are making memes out of it. The room spun. It wasn't just the school anymore. It was the internet. The world outside those walls. Lena's notebook, her most private thoughts, was now public. The day crawled forward, every class a blur. Phones buzzed and lit up around her. Students whispered and laughed. Some looked at her with pity, others with curiosity. A few even asked, "Did you really write all that?" As if she owed them answers. At lunch, she sat with Olivia again, but the whispers didn't stop. Even across the cafeteria, she could see Ethan grinning, surrounded by his friends. He looked proud, like he had won. Lena gripped her sandwich without eating. I can't do this, she whispered. You can, Olivia said firmly. You're stronger than you think. People are laughing now, but some of them are actually impressed. They don't want to admit it, but they are. Lena shook her head. It doesn't matter. He ruined everything. Olivia leaned closer. Then don't let him win. Don't hide. Show them you're more than their jokes. That afternoon, Lena stayed after school, waiting in the resource center again. Mr. Carter had asked her to meet him. When he walked in, she didn't even try to hide the tears. It's everywhere, she said, her voice breaking. My words, my secrets. Everyone's laughing at me. Mr. Carter's face darkened. I know, I've seen it. But Lena, listen to me carefully. You have two choices. You can let them define you, or you can define yourself. Which one are you going to choose? She swallowed hard. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You are, he said firmly. Strength doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you keep going anyway. And I promise you, there are people who see your brilliance. People who will support you. But you have to be brave enough to let them. She looked at him, desperate. But what if it gets worse? Mr. Carter leaned back, folding his arms. Then we make it better. I have an idea. There's a statewide academic showcase next month. Students submit original work, essays, projects, research. I want you to enter. Her eyes widened. Me? No, I can't. Yes, you can, he said, his voice steady. You already have everything you need. You've been writing, solving problems, exploring ideas. All we have to do is put it together. The thought terrified her. Standing in front of judges, sharing her work with strangers, letting the world see her again. But then another thought crept in. Maybe this was her chance to take back her voice, to prove Ethan wrong. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll try. Mr. Carter smiled. Good. And Lena, one more thing. Never let someone who's afraid of your light convince you to dim it. For the next few days, Lena poured herself into the project. After school, she stayed in the resource center with Mr. Carter, drafting essays and solving problems that blended math with storytelling, her unique gift. Olivia often joined them, offering encouragement and even bringing snacks to keep Lena going. For the first time in her life, Lena felt like she belonged somewhere. But Ethan hadn't forgotten. It was Friday afternoon when the next blow landed. Lena was walking to the bus stop when she noticed her backpack felt lighter. She unzipped it, and her heart dropped. Her notebook was gone. She spun around, panic rising, and saw Ethan standing across the street, smirking. In his hand was the familiar worn notebook. You really should keep a better eye on your stuff, he called out. Give it back, Lena shouted, her voice cracking. He flipped through the pages casually, as though it were nothing. You know, the internet loved the first batch. I bet they'll love the rest even more. Her chest tightened. Please, don't. Ethan's grin widened. What's it worth to you? Tears burned her eyes. She hated herself for it, for begging. But she whispered, anything. He leaned closer, his voice low. Then stop acting like you're better than everyone. Stop pretending you're special. Or I'll make sure the whole world sees every last word you've written. Her stomach twisted. It wasn't just about humiliation anymore. It was control. He wanted to silence her. For a moment, she almost gave in. Almost promised to stay quiet, to fade back into the shadows just to protect herself. But then she remembered Mr. Carter's words. Strength means you keep going anyway. Lena lifted her chin. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out. You can spread every word I've written, and I still won't stop. You can't erase me, Ethan. His smile vanished. His eyes darkened. Wrong answer, he said softly. And before she could react, he tore a page from the notebook, crumpled it, and lit it with a lighter he pulled from his pocket. The flame curled the edges, smoke rising into the air. Lena gasped. No! Ethan dropped the burning page onto the pavement, watching it blacken. If you don't stay in your place, he said coldly, this whole notebook will go up in flames. Lena froze, horror clawing at her chest. Her words. her brilliance, her years of secrets, all of it dangling by a thread of fire. The burning page curled into ash on the sidewalk, its words vanishing into smoke. Lena's eyes filled with tears as she lunged forward, stamping it out with her shoe, but it was too late. The page was gone forever. Ethan smirked, holding the rest of her notebook like a weapon. "You want to keep playing brave?" he sneered. "Fine, but I'll burn this whole thing if you keep crossing me." Lena clutched her backpack straps, her heart pounding. "That notebook is mine. You have no right." He leaned closer, his face inches from hers. "Everything you write is a joke, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it." For a second, Lena felt frozen. But then, a spark inside her flared. The same spark that made her speak up in class, the one Mr. Carter had told her not to hide. She grabbed for the notebook. Ethan pulled back, laughing. "Whoa, slow down. You really want to make a scene here?" People had started to notice them. A few kids across the street turned to watch. Ethan glanced around, his grin fading just slightly. He didn't like attention when he wasn't controlling it. "Fine," he said, shoving the notebook into his bag. "You'll get it back when I feel like it." And then he walked away, leaving Lena trembling, helpless, and furious. That night, Lena lay awake staring at the ceiling again. But this time, fear wasn't the only thing running through her veins. Anger burned there too. He had crossed a line. Her notebook wasn't just paper. It was her life, her heart, her brilliance, and Ethan thought he could snuff it out like a flame. Not this time. The next morning, Lena went to school determined to find a way to get it back. Olivia noticed her tense expression at breakfast in the cafeteria. "What happened?" Olivia asked. "He has my notebook," Lena whispered, "and he burned a page in front of me." Olivia's jaw dropped. "What? Lena, that's awful. You have to tell someone." Lena shook her head. "If I go to the principal, he'll just say it's mine against his. And Ethan knows how to make it look like I'm lying. He's good at it." "Then what are you going to do?" Lena looked around the cafeteria. Ethan sat at his usual table, surrounded by his friends, laughing as if nothing had happened. Her stomach tightened, but her mind stayed sharp. "I'm going to take it back," she said quietly. Later that day, Lena stayed after school, waiting for Mr. Carter again. But when he arrived, she didn't mention the notebook. She couldn't, not yet. She wasn't ready to admit that Ethan had stolen more than just her pages. Instead, she poured herself into the academic showcase project. She wrote, revised, and practiced speaking her words aloud. Mr. Carter encouraged her every step of the way. "You're growing stronger every day," he said. "I can see it." But inside, Lena felt like she was splitting in two. One part of her was building, rising, becoming something more. The other part was shrinking, afraid of Ethan's threats, terrified he would destroy everything before she even had the chance to shine. Friday afternoon, Lena made her move. She knew Ethan always left his backpack in the locker room during basketball practice. She also knew he rarely locked it. He thought no one would dare touch his things. So Lena waited until practice started, then slipped into the empty room. The sound of bouncing basketballs echoed faintly down the hall. Her hands shook as she found his bag. She unzipped it slowly, her heart pounding so loudly she thought it would give her away. And there it was, her notebook. She grabbed it, hugging it to her chest. Relief surged through her. She had it back. She could breathe again. But then, "What do you think you're doing?" Ethan's voice froze her in place. She turned. He stood in the doorway, sweat dripping from his forehead, a basketball in one hand. He must have left practice early. His eyes locked on the notebook in her arms. "That's mine now," he said coldly. "No," Lena whispered, tightening her grip. "It's mine, and you can't have it." His jaw clenched. He dropped the basketball, stepping closer. "You think you're brave now? You think Mr. Carter or your little friend can protect you? You're nothing, Lena. And if you don't hand that over, I'll make sure everyone in the school hates you more than they already do." Her chest heaved, but this time she didn't back down. "You don't scare me," she said, her voice trembling but firm. Ethan's face twisted with anger. In one swift motion, he lunged forward, trying to snatch the notebook from her hands. They struggled, pulling back and forth. Lena's heart raced. If she lost her grip, it would be over. If he got it back, he'd destroy everything. But in the struggle, the notebook slipped. Pages tore, scattering across the locker room floor. Lena gasped, diving to gather them. Ethan reached down too, but she was faster this time. She scooped up page after page, her fingers trembling, her breath sharp. Finally, she clutched the torn, battered notebook against her chest, backing away. "This is mine," she said again, stronger now. "And you can't take it from me." For a moment, Ethan just stared at her, fury flashing in his eyes. But then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. "Fine. Keep it," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "But you just made the biggest mistake of your life." He turned and walked out, leaving Lena shaken, clutching her notebook like it was her last lifeline. That night, she sat at her desk, taping the torn pages back together. The notebook was bruised and battered now, but it was hers again. Every scar, every crease, felt like proof of the fight she had endured. But she knew Ethan wasn't finished. His words echoed in her mind. The biggest mistake of your life. What would he do next? Lena didn't know. But she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't going to stop now. She was going to finish her project, enter that showcase, and show everyone the brilliance she had hidden for so long. Yet deep down, a question haunted her. Would Ethan let her make it that far? The answer came sooner than she expected. The following Monday morning, Lena walked into school and froze. Spray painted across her locker, in bold, dripping red letters, were 3 words that made her stomach twist into knots. "Freak writer girl." The hallway fell silent. Everyone was staring. Phones were already out, recording, snapping pictures. And standing at the end of the hall, grinning like he had already won, was Ethan. The red spray paint dripped down her locker like blood. The words "Freak writer girl" glowing under the fluorescent hallway lights. For a moment, Lena couldn't breathe. Her throat felt tight, her chest heavy. Phones clicked. Students whispered. Some laughed, some shook their heads, and others just stared in silence. Ethan leaned against the wall at the far end, his arms crossed, smirk wide and unshakable. He didn't need to say a word. His message was loud enough. Lena felt the weight of 100 eyes pressing down on her. She wanted to run, to disappear, to become invisible again. But her feet stayed rooted to the floor. Olivia rushed to her side. "Don't look at them," she whispered urgently. "Come on, let's go to the office. We'll tell them it was Ethan." But Lena shook her head faintly. "They won't believe me." She had seen it before. Ethan twisting situations, putting on his charming mask. Teachers always saw him as the golden boy, polite, athletic, well-liked. Who would they believe? Tears burned her eyes as she turned away from the locker. The rest of the day was torture. Every class, every hallway. She felt the stares, heard the whispers. Notes slipped onto her desk. Some mocked her. Others had crude sketches of her holding her notebook like a shield. She ignored them all, clenching her jaw. But inside, she was unraveling. At lunch, she sat with Olivia in the corner of the cafeteria. Olivia slammed her tray down, fuming. "This is too much. They have to do something. We can't just let him keep." "Olivia," Lena cut her off quietly. "If we tell them, he'll only find another way to hurt me. He won't stop." Her friend's face softened. "So what are you going to do?" Lena looked at her food, untouched. "I don't know." After school, Lena stayed late in the resource center. She didn't want to go home yet, not with the image of her locker burned into her mind. She sat at a desk, flipping through the battered pages of her notebook. Mr. Carter appeared at her side. "I saw what happened this morning," he said gently. Lena's eyes widened. "You did. I was walking down the hall just after it happened. And I know you don't want to talk about it, but Lena, that wasn't right. You don't deserve this." Her throat tightened. It doesn't matter. He's not going to stop. Mr. Carter crouched down to her level. Listen to me. People like him feed on fear. He wants to break you to silence you. But you're stronger than that. And right now, you have something he'll never have. What? She whispered. Your brilliance, Mr. Carter said firmly. Your words. Your ability to turn pain into power. That's your weapon, Lena. Use it. For the first time that day, a flicker of strength returned to her eyes. Over the next week, Lena poured herself into the academic showcase project. She stayed after school, filling pages with stories and equations, turning every insult, every cruel word into fuel. Olivia supported her, bringing snacks, cheering her on, and reminding her she wasn't alone. But the bullying didn't stop. Someone slipped another note into her locker. Why don't you just quit? Freaks don't win contests. Another day, she found one of her essays crumpled in the trash, even though she hadn't thrown it away. Ethan's grin across the room told her everything she needed to know. Each attack chipped away at her, but each night, she taped her notebook tighter, writing harder, refusing to give up. Then came the turning point. It was a Thursday afternoon, and Mr. Carter had gathered a few students in the resource center to work on projects. Lena sat quietly in the back, bent over her notebook, when one of the seniors, a tall boy named Marcus, walked by. He paused, glancing down at her work. You wrote this? Lena froze. Yeah. Marcus raised his eyebrows. This is good. Like really good. Why haven't you shared it? Her cheeks flushed. People don't usually care. Well, they should, Marcus said. If you enter this in the showcase, you might actually win. Other students leaned in, curious. A girl named Sarah took one of Lena's pages and read it aloud. Soon the room filled with murmurs, not mocking this time, but impressed. Lena's heart pounded. For the first time, her words weren't a weapon used against her. They were opening doors. Mr. Carter caught her eye and smiled knowingly. That night, Lena walked home with a strange feeling buzzing inside her. Hope. Maybe she could do this. Maybe she could rise above Ethan's cruelty and show everyone what she was truly capable of. But as she reached her front porch, her hope shattered. There, taped to her front door, was a single page ripped from her notebook. On it, in thick red marker, someone had scrawled, "You'll regret this." Her hands trembled as she ripped it down, clutching it to her chest. Her mind raced. How had Ethan gotten her address? Had he been to her house? Was he watching her even now? Her stomach knotted with fear. It wasn't just the school anymore. It was her home, her safe space. Ethan had crossed another line. And this time, Lena realized, he wasn't just trying to silence her. He was trying to break her completely. The page trembled in Lena's hands as she stood on the porch. The bold red letters, "You'll regret this," stared back at her, louder than any scream. Her heart thudded so hard it echoed in her ears. Someone had been here. Someone had stood at her front door, close enough to see through the windows. She spun around, scanning the street. It was quiet, too quiet. The hum of a distant lawnmower, the barking of a dog 3 houses down, the soft rustle of wind in the trees. But no one in sight. Her chest tightened. Was Ethan watching her now? She crumpled the note in her fist and darted inside, locking the door behind her. That night, Lena sat at her desk, her notebook open in front of her, but she couldn't write. Every shadow outside her window looked like a figure lurking. Every sound made her jump. Her mother knocked softly. "Honey, you okay?" Lena shoved the crumpled note into her drawer before turning. "Yeah, Mom. Just school stuff." Her mom studied her face for a moment, concern in her eyes, but didn't press further. "All right, don't stay up too late." As the door closed, Lena whispered to herself, "I can't let him win." But her resolve cracked when she thought of Ethan standing on her porch. He wasn't just embarrassing her anymore. He was invading her life. The next morning, Olivia noticed Lena's pale face. "You didn't sleep again, did you?" Lena shook her head, whispering so no one else could hear. "He came to my house." Olivia's eyes widened. "What? Are you serious?" He left a note. He knows where I live. Olivia gripped her arm. Lena, that's dangerous. You have to tell someone. Lena's throat tightened. And then what? They'll confront him, he'll deny it, and I'll look crazy. Meanwhile, he'll just find another way to hurt me. Olivia bit her lip. So what are you going to do? Lena looked down at her notebook. Finish what I started. That day after school, Lena stayed behind to work with Mr. Carter again. The resource center felt like the only safe place left. She buried herself in her project, letting her words flow. For a few hours, she forgot Ethan, forgot the note, forgot the fear. It was just her notebook, and the steady encouragement of Mr. Carter. At one point, he leaned over her shoulder. Lena, this is extraordinary. Do you realize what you're doing here? She shook her head. You're creating something no one else could. This isn't just writing. It's truth. And truth has a way of changing people. His words wrapped around her like a shield. For the first time since the porch note, she felt stronger. But the calm shattered again the next morning. As Lena walked through the school doors, she noticed a crowd gathered near the bulletin board in the main hall. Murmurs buzzed through the air. Students were pointing, laughing, whispering. Her stomach dropped. She pushed through the crowd and froze. There, pinned in the center of the board, was a blown-up photocopy of one of her private notebook pages. The one where she had written about feeling invisible, about being ignored, about begging in silence for someone to see her. Underneath, scrawled in red marker, were the words, "No wonder nobody likes you." Lena's face burned. The laughter, the stares, the pointing. It all crashed over her like a wave. She wanted to disappear, to vanish into thin air. Her eyes darted around. And then she saw him, Ethan, leaning casually against a locker, watching her reaction. His grin stretched wider when he caught her gaze. She couldn't breathe. She pushed through the crowd, running down the hall until she burst into the girls' bathroom. She locked herself in a stall, clutching her chest, fighting back sobs. The words echoed in her mind. No wonder nobody likes you. Was it true? Was that how everyone saw her? Her phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Don't look at it. Come to me. I've got your back. Lena closed her eyes, taking shaky breaths. Olivia was right. She wasn't completely alone. But how long could she keep fighting Ethan's games? At lunch, Olivia found her. I'm sorry, Lena. He's out of control. This isn't just bullying anymore, it's harassment. It's dangerous. Lena shook her head, her voice low but steady. He wants me to break. He wants me to give up. But I'm not going to. I'm going to finish this project. I'm going to stand up in that showcase and let them hear me. Olivia smiled weakly. That's the Lena I know. But even as Lena said it, she felt fear gnawing inside her. Could she really stand on a stage when Ethan was determined to destroy her? That evening, Lena sat at her desk, staring at her notebook. The words blurred before her eyes. She picked up her pen, hesitated, then forced herself to keep writing. Every stroke of the pen felt like defiance. Every sentence was a refusal to be silenced. But then, a sharp tap at her window. Her head snapped up, heart leaping into her throat. Another tap, louder this time. Slowly, she stood and crept to the window. Her hands shook as she pulled the curtain aside. And there, outside in the dark, stood a shadowy figure. She couldn't see the face, but she didn't need to. The posture, the stance, it was him. Ethan. Her breath caught. The figure raised a hand. Something small hit the glass, a stone. She stumbled back, heart racing. And then, the figure leaned closer, and in the dim light from the porch, she saw it. A wicked grin spreading across his face. Ethan. Right there. At her window. Lena stumbled back from the window, her breath sharp and uneven. Ethan's grin in the darkness froze her blood. For a moment, she thought her legs would give way beneath her. Another stone tapped against the glass. Tick, tick. The sound cut through the silence like a warning. She wanted to scream, but fear glued her throat shut. Finally, she found her voice. Go away, she shouted, her hands shaking. Ethan cupped his ear as if he couldn't hear, then laughed silently, the sound muffled through the glass but his expression clear. Her heart raced as she grabbed her phone, fumbling to text Olivia. "He's here. At my window." Her finger hovered over the call button for her mom, but she froze. If she told her mom, she would have to explain everything, and Lena wasn't ready for that storm. When she looked back, the shadow outside was gone. She stayed frozen by the window, staring into the night, afraid to blink. Every rustle of leaves, every passing car, every shadow looked like him coming back. That night, sleep never came. The next morning, Lena dragged herself into school, pale and exhausted. Olivia saw her and immediately pulled her aside. "Tell me exactly what happened." "He was at my window," Lena whispered, smiling, throwing stones. "He wanted me to know he could find me anywhere." Olivia's face hardened. "That's it. I'm telling the principal." "No," Lena said quickly, panic flashing in her eyes. "If you tell, he'll come after me harder. I need to handle this my way." Olivia clenched her fists. "Lena, this is serious. He's stalking you now." "I know," Lena said, her voice breaking, "but I can't let him take this from me. If I go to the principal and they don't believe me, I lose everything. The project, the showcase, my chance to finally be seen." Olivia sighed, torn but nodded. "Okay, but promise me you won't face him alone anymore." Lena swallowed. "I promise." That day, she found a small bit of peace in the resource center again. Mr. Carter noticed her tired eyes. "Rough night?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded faintly. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." Mr. Carter didn't press, but he leaned closer. "Remember what I told you. Your voice is stronger than you think. No matter what happens, don't let anyone steal it." Something in his steady tone grounded her. For a few hours, she let herself focus on her writing again, burying her fear under sentences and stories. But the calm shattered once more. That evening, as Lena walked home, she sensed it, the feeling of being followed. The hairs on her neck stood on end. She quickened her pace, clutching her backpack tighter. Every step behind her seemed to echo hers. She turned suddenly. At first, she saw nothing but shadows stretching across the sidewalk. Then, a figure stepped out from behind a tree. Ethan. Her stomach dropped. "Relax," he said, walking toward her casually. "I'm just out for a walk." "This is my street," Lena snapped, her voice trembling. "Go away." He chuckled. "You've got some fire in you now. I like it. But fire burns out, Lena. And I'll make sure yours does too." She backed away. "Why are you doing this?" His smile faded, his eyes narrowing. "Because you don't know your place. You were supposed to stay invisible, quiet. But now you think you can rise above me? No, I won't let that happen." Her heart pounded as she turned and ran. She sprinted up her driveway, fumbling with her keys, slamming the door shut behind her. Through the window, she saw him still standing there, staring before finally walking away. That night she couldn't write. Her hands trembled too much to hold the pen. Every creak of the house made her flinch. She sat on her bed, gripping her notebook, whispering to herself, "He can't win. He can't." But for the first time, doubt crept in. What if he succeeded? What if her voice was silenced before she even had the chance to be heard? The next day, Lena tried to act normal, but the tension clung to her like a shadow. In history class, Ethan sat behind her. She could feel his eyes burning into her back. Halfway through the lesson, she felt something hit her shoulder, a folded piece of paper. Her stomach tightened as she unfolded it. "Last warning. Drop out of the showcase, or I'll make sure you regret it." Her hand shook as she crumpled the note. He wasn't just threatening anymore, he was making demands. At lunch, she told Olivia. "You can't let him scare you into quitting," Olivia said firmly. "That's what he wants." "But what if he does something worse?" Lena whispered. "What if he really hurts me?" Olivia reached across the table, grabbing her hand. "Then we fight back. Together." For a moment, Lena felt a flicker of strength. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. That afternoon, As Lena gathered her books from her locker, she found something tucked inside. Another note. But this one was different. It wasn't from Ethan. In neat handwriting, it read, "Don't give up. I see your brilliance too." Her breath caught. She looked around, but the hallway was crowded, faces blurred, and she couldn't tell who had left it. For the first time in days, a smile tugged at her lips. Somewhere out there, someone else believed in her. Someone she didn't even know. It was a reminder. Ethan wasn't the only voice in her life. That night, Lena returned to her desk with new determination. She opened her notebook and began to write again, her pen racing across the page. She wrote about shadows and light, about fear and courage, about voices that try to silence others and the power of refusing to stay quiet. Her words flowed like fire. But as she finished, a sound made her freeze. A knock at the front door. Her mom called from the living room. "Lena, can you get that?" Lena hesitated, her chest tightening. Slowly, she walked to the door and pulled it open. And there, standing on her porch under the dim porch light, was Ethan, holding her notebook. Lena's breath caught in her throat as she stared at Ethan standing on the porch, her notebook clutched casually in his hand. How did you get that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan smirked. "You should be more careful with your things. Found it in your locker. Guess I wanted to see what's been keeping you so busy." Her stomach twisted. That notebook wasn't just paper. It was her soul, her thoughts, the only place she felt free. "Give it back," she said, trying to sound firm, though her voice cracked. He flipped through the pages slowly, his fingers grazing her words like they were his to claim. "You really think people care about this? Stories? Poems? No one's ever going to read it. Except me." Lena's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break her ribs. From the living room, her mom called, "Lena? Who's at the door?" Her voice shook. Just a classmate. Dropping something off." Ethan leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Smart. Keep me a secret, or things get ugly." She wanted to slam the door, to scream, to run. But fear rooted her to the spot. Finally, he shoved the notebook into her chest so hard she staggered back. "Don't forget my warning." And then he walked away, whistling like nothing had happened. Lena shut the door quickly, her hands shaking as she hugged the notebook to her chest. Her mom peered into the hallway. "Everything okay?" Lena forced a smile. "Yeah, just homework stuff." But inside, she was unraveling. That night, she sat at her desk with the notebook open, staring at her words. They looked different now, tainted by his eyes. She almost tore the pages out, but she stopped herself. "No," she whispered. "He doesn't get to take this from me." She pulled her pen from her bag and began to write, forcing her fear into sentences, turning it into something she could control. Every word became a shield, every line a weapon. For hours, she wrote until her hand ached and the pages filled. When she finally stopped, she felt lighter, like she had poured her fear out and locked it away on paper. The next day at school, Ethan didn't even look at her. He sat in the back of class, laughing with his friends like nothing had happened. It unsettled Lena even more. But in the resource center, Mr. Carter noticed something new in her eyes, a fire that hadn't been there before. "You've been working hard," he said, flipping through her draft. "These words carry weight. You're not just telling a story, Lena, you're living it. And you're winning." Lena looked down, her voice soft. "It doesn't feel like I'm winning." "You're still standing, aren't you?" he said gently. "That's winning." Something about his calm assurance steadied her. Later that afternoon, Olivia pulled Lena aside. "I saw Ethan laughing with his buddies. Did he do something again?" Lena hesitated, then admitted, "He came to my house last night. He had my notebook." Olivia's eyes widened. "What?" "Lena, that's not just bullying anymore. That's dangerous." "I know," Lena whispered. "But if I tell, he'll twist it and I'll lose everything. I have to survive until the showcase. After that, nothing he does will matter." Olivia frowned but didn't argue. Instead, she hugged her. "You're stronger than you think." For a while, things seemed quieter. Ethan didn't approach her. He didn't send notes. For 3 days, Lena almost believed the storm had passed. She let herself focus on her writing again, adding the final touches to her project. She even smiled during lunch, a rare flicker of peace breaking through the clouds. But peace never lasted long. On the 4th day, something happened that made Lena's blood run cold. During English class, the teacher asked for volunteers to read aloud from their journals. Before Lena could even look down at her desk, Ethan raised his hand. "I have something interesting I'd like to share," he said with a grin. He pulled out a paper. Lena's paper. Her heart stopped. As he began to read, her words spilled into the classroom. Her private writing. Her deepest thoughts. But twisted. He mocked her sentences, exaggerated her metaphors, turned her vulnerability into a joke. The class erupted in laughter. Lena felt her chest cave in. It was like being stripped bare in front of everyone. She wanted to vanish, to sink into the floor and disappear. But then, something inside her snapped. "No," she said softly, almost to herself. The laughter quieted just enough for her voice to be heard. "No," she repeated louder, her fists clenched. "Those words don't belong to you. They're mine. And if you don't understand them, that's your loss, not mine." The room fell silent. Even the teacher looked stunned. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. For the first time, his grin faltered. Lena grabbed her notebook from her desk and held it close. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She sat tall, her eyes locked on him. And in that silence, something shifted. The power he had over her cracked. After class, Ethan shoved past her roughly in the hallway, muttering, "You'll pay for that." But Lena didn't flinch. For the first time, she felt something stronger than fear. She felt defiance. That evening, she told Olivia what happened. Olivia's jaw dropped. "You stood up to him? In front of everyone?" Lena nodded slowly. "I was scared, but I couldn't let him own my words." Olivia smiled proudly. "That's the Lena I know." For a brief moment, hope bloomed again. But just as she began to breathe easier, the next blow came. The following morning, as Lena entered school, she saw students crowded around the notice board. They were laughing, whispering, pointing. Her stomach churned as she pushed through to see what it was. Pinned to the board were photocopies of her notebook pages. Dozens of them. Her most personal thoughts, on display for everyone to mock. Her chest tightened, her hands shaking as she ripped them down. Laughter rippled through the hallway. And then she heard it, Ethan's voice behind her. "Looks like the whole school gets to enjoy your little stories now." Lena's hands shook as she ripped page after page off the notice board. Her words, her secret thoughts, fluttered like torn feathers onto the floor. Students whispered all around her, some snickering, some staring, but no one stepping in to help. By the time she had ripped down the last sheet, her eyes stung with tears. She clutched the crumpled papers in her arms, her chest heaving, and turned to leave. That's when Ethan stepped into her path, arms crossed, smirking. "Didn't I tell you?" he taunted, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "You don't belong here. You don't get to shine. Not while I'm around." Something inside her cracked. She wanted to scream, to shove him, to tear his grin from his face. But before she could speak, a voice cut through the air. "Is there a problem here?" Mr. Carter stood at the edge of the crowd, his eyes steady, his tone calm but sharp enough to silence the whispers. Ethan's grin faltered, but he quickly recovered. "No problem, sir. Just joking around." Mr. Carter's gaze lingered on him, then shifted to Lena, who looked like she was about to collapse. "Lena, come with me." Inside the quiet of the resource center, Lena finally let her tears fall. She dropped the crumpled papers onto the desk, her voice breaking. "He put them all up. Every word I wrote. Everyone saw. They laughed." Mr. Carter leaned forward, his expression gentle but firm. "Listen to me. Words have power, but only if you let them. Right now, Ethan thinks he controls the narrative. But Lena, this isn't the end of your story. This is just the beginning." She shook her head. "I can't. I'm tired. He won't stop. Yes, he will, Mr. Carter said, his voice steady. Because you're stronger than he realizes. And because you have people who see your brilliance, even if you don't always see it yourself. She wiped her eyes. But what do I do? Keep writing, he said. Don't let him silence you. And when you step on that stage at the showcase, you let the world hear the voice he tried so hard to bury. Something about the conviction in his tone made her chest feel lighter, as if for the first time, she wasn't carrying the weight alone. The rest of the day, Lena kept her head down. Olivia walked with her between classes like a guard, shooting glares at anyone who snickered. But the laughter, the whispers, they still came. By lunch, she could barely eat, her appetite buried under humiliation. Don't listen to them, Olivia whispered fiercely. They're just sheep. You've got something real, Lena. They don't. Lena forced a small smile, but her insides churned. Still, she noticed something strange. Two girls she hardly knew gave her sympathetic looks in the hallway, and a boy from math class quietly handed her one of the torn pages, saying, "Your writing's actually really good." Stunned her. Maybe not everyone saw her words as a joke. That night, Lena couldn't sleep again. She sat at her desk, staring at the blank page. For a long time, her pen hovered without moving. Finally, she wrote, "They tried to make me invisible. They laughed at my voice. But I am still here." The words bled onto the page, shaky but real. She wrote until dawn, her hand aching, but her heart steadier than it had been in days. The showcase was less than 2 weeks away. Every rehearsal, Lena poured herself into her work, shaping her story until it felt like fire on the page. But Ethan wasn't finished. One afternoon, as Lena left school with Olivia, she found her locker wide open again. Inside, her notebooks had been shredded. Pages ripped into pieces, stuffed into the corners like garbage. Her throat tightened. This time she didn't cry. She just stared at the destruction, her fists trembling. Olivia gasped. "Lena, I can't believe this. He's out of control." Lena whispered, "He wants me broken. He wants me to quit." Olivia looked at her. "And?" Lena lifted her chin, her jaw set. "I won't." But Ethan wasn't content with just tearing her pages. 2 days later, something worse happened. During the last period, the intercom crackled. "Lena Miller, please report to the principal's office." Confused and uneasy, she made her way there. Inside, she found Ethan already sitting, arms folded, feigning innocence. The principal's face was stern. "Lena, we've had a disturbing report. Ethan claims you've been harassing him, sending threatening notes, trying to sabotage his schoolwork." Lena's mouth dropped open. "What? That's not true." Ethan put on a perfect mask of hurt. "She's been obsessed with me. She won't leave me alone." The principal frowned. "Ethan showed us several notes signed with your initials. If this is true, Lena, it's serious." Lena's head spun. "Notes? Signed with her initials?" He had planted them. "No," she said, her voice shaking. "He's lying. He's the one. He's been stalking me, threatening me, destroying my notebooks." But Ethan sat calmly, nodding sadly as if he were the victim. "She's making it up. I tried to ignore it, but it's gone too far." The principal leaned back, her expression unreadable. "We'll need to investigate this. Until then, Lena, I suggest you keep your distance from Ethan." Lena's heart pounded. "He's turning it all on me. And they believe him." That night she couldn't eat. She couldn't focus. She sat curled on her bed, staring at her notebook like it was her last lifeline. Her mom knocked softly on her door. "Sweetheart? Everything okay?" Lena hesitated, then called back, "Yeah, just tired." But inside she was falling apart. Olivia was furious when she heard the next day. "He framed you? That's it. We're telling Mr. Carter everything." "No," Lena whispered, her voice heavy. "If the principal already thinks I'm the problem, they won't listen. It'll just make things worse." Olivia shook her head. "Then what do we do?" Lena gripped her notebook. "We wait, and we fight back on stage. If I can tell my story there, if I can make people really hear me, Then Ethan can't twist it anymore. Olivia studied her, then nodded slowly. Okay, but if he tries anything again, we go public. Promise me. Lena swallowed hard. I promise. The days crept closer to the showcase. Every time Lena thought Ethan had run out of ways to hurt her, he found a new one. But she kept writing, kept practicing, holding on to the one thing he couldn't destroy, her voice. Until the night before the showcase. When Lena came home from rehearsal, she found her bedroom window wide open, and on her desk sat her notebook. Burned. The edges blackened, the pages charred, ashes scattered across the desk like a warning. Her knees buckled. Tears blurred her vision as she picked up the ruined book, its cover still warm. Ethan had found a way into her sanctuary. Lena stared at the smoldering notebook in her hands, the ashes falling like snow across her desk. Her sanctuary had been invaded. Ethan had crossed a line she never thought he would. She sank onto the floor, her chest heaving. For a moment, it felt like all the strength she had built was gone, burned away with those pages. But then, through the tears, she realized something. The words themselves weren't gone. They were still inside her. He could burn the paper, but not her voice. And tomorrow the whole school would finally hear it. The day of the showcase arrived. Lena's stomach was a knot of fear as she walked into the auditorium, her palms sweaty, her knees weak. The room buzzed with students, teachers, parents. The stage was lit brightly, the microphone standing tall at the center. Olivia squeezed Lena's hand. You've got this. Forget him. Just speak. Let them feel you. Mr. Carter met her eyes from the front row and gave a small nod, his quiet way of saying, I believe in you. But then Lena saw him. Ethan, leaning against the back wall, arms folded, watching her with that same cold grin. He mouthed the words, You'll regret this. Her stomach flipped. For a moment, she almost turned and ran. But then she remembered the ashes, the laughter, the whispers. She remembered every time she was ignored, every time she was made small. She stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding, but the silence of the audience was louder. Lena gripped the microphone, her hands trembling. For a heartbeat, no words came. She felt her throat close, panic clawing at her chest. Then she remembered what Mr. Carter told her. Your voice is stronger than you think. She took a shaky breath, and she began. First, her voice was soft, fragile. She spoke of shadows, of being invisible, of walking halls where no one saw her. She spoke of writing words in secret because the world outside wouldn't listen. The audience leaned in. Her voice grew stronger. She spoke of laughter at her expense, of her words being stolen, twisted, burned. She didn't say Ethan's name, but every sentence painted the truth. And then she spoke of fire, not the fire that destroyed, but the fire inside her. The fire that no one could burn away. By the time she finished, the auditorium was silent. Not a whisper, not a laugh, just silence thick with weight. Then slowly applause began. A ripple, then a wave, until the entire room was clapping, cheering, standing. Lena's chest swelled, tears streaming down her face. Not from pain this time, but from release. She had done it. She had spoken. She had been heard. And for the first time, she didn't feel invisible. As she stepped off the stage, Olivia threw her arms around her. You killed it. Lena, they loved you. Mr. Carter smiled proudly. I told you. Brilliance. But behind them, Ethan's face was stone. His smirk was gone, replaced by fury. He stormed forward, grabbing Lena's arm roughly. You think you won? You think this changes anything? The crowd gasped. Teachers rushed forward. Lena pulled free, her voice steady, loud enough for everyone to hear. You don't control me anymore, Ethan. You never did. And now everyone knows it. The room went quiet. The teachers stepped between them, pulling Ethan back. His protests, she's lying, she's obsessed with me, fell flat against the eyes of dozens of witnesses who had just seen the truth in Lena's voice. For the first time, Ethan looked small, powerless. Later that evening, Lena sat on the steps outside the school, the cool air washing over her. Her body still shook from adrenaline, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years. Olivia sat beside her. You realize what you did in there, right? You didn't just stand up for yourself. You made them all see you. Really see you. Lena gave a small smile. For so long, I thought I was invisible. But maybe I just needed the right moment. Mr. Carter walked out, his hands in his pockets, his expression warm. That was more than a moment, Lena. That was the start of something bigger. She looked up at him, her voice soft. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. He shook his head. No, Lena. You're the one who found your voice. I just reminded you it was there. The days that followed were different. Students who had laughed at her before now stopped her in the hallway to say her words moved them. Teachers praised her bravery. Even strangers, kids she'd never spoken to, smiled at her, nodding in quiet respect. For the first time, Lena felt like she belonged. And though Ethan tried to slink back into the shadows, his grip on her had shattered. He couldn't twist the story anymore. She had told it herself, in her own voice, and everyone had heard. One evening, weeks later, Lena sat at her desk with a new notebook. The ashes of the old one were gone, but she didn't need them anymore. She wrote, I was ignored for years, but all it took was one person seeing me for who I was, and everything changed. I learned that sometimes kindness is the match that lights the fire inside us. And once that fire burns, no one, not even the shadows, can put it out. She closed the notebook, smiling through the tears, because for the first time in her life, Lena didn't feel invisible. She felt brilliant. Thank you for watching. If you found this story engaging, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective adds value to the conversation. To stay updated with future stories exploring themes of race, inequality, and the unexpected choices that shape lives, please consider subscribing to this channel. Your support helps us continue creating meaningful and thought-provoking content.